Hi everyone, this is Joyce Pellino Crane. I'm the editor of the Westford Eagle, and I'm sitting here today with Marie White-Small. She's the author of a new book just out called Stony Kill, and it's published by Select Press.
Select Books.
Select Books. And Marie, welcome to the studio, and welcome to Westford, where I hear you have a Westford connection.
I do. My husband is originally from Westford, Frank Small, and his family lived on Crown Road.
Well, that's a wonderful connection, and we're happy to have you.
Thank you.
And tell him hi for us.
I will.
You now live where?
We live in Bennington, Vermont.
And so you've written this book, Stony Kill, and we want to talk a little bit about it from a few points of view. Can you give us a synopsis of the book?
Sure.
First?
So it's about a Brooklyn baker. Her name is Joss. She's the protagonist in this book. And her mother suddenly dies, and her reaction to this unexpected death is that she runs from everything in her life. And she retreats to the family farm in Canaan, New York, upstate from the city that she inherits. And part of it, in going back to that place, she goes back also to her life as a child.
And there's an incident that happens when she's a child that is sort of the culmination of the book.
Yes.
And there is some kind of there's a couple of incidents related to guns.
Right.
Without giving it away, no spoiler alerts. So you wrote this book because you had something happen in your life. Can you tell us about that?
Yes. An extended family member had a tragedy which involved guns and children. And so I was motivated to write this story because of that incident.
And you don't want to go into details about that incident, but can you tell us a little bit about your philosophy on gun control?
Well, I'm from Vermont, which is, a big sportsman's state, and so it's a complicated issue in some sense. But I really do feel that as a nation, we need to look at gun safety much more than what we do. And I'm a strong advocate for putting safeguards in place so that fewer incidents occur. According to the Washington Post, there is a child 3 years old or younger has found a gun every single week in 2015 and either killed themselves or somebody else or hurt somebody. And it's just, it's become an epidemic.
And that's a stunning statistic.
It is. It's stunning.
And very concerning.
Right. And so you figure that leaves us another dozen incidents before we get to 2016 that are, if past is prologue, then that's what we're looking at.
So you created this family of characters in this book, and Joss is the main protagonist.
Mm-hmm.
And you go back and forth in time between Joss as a 33-year-old adult, is she 30?
33.
33-year-old woman,
right.
Not married, running a bakery, and then going back in time to when she was a child, mm-hmm. and living with a very compromised father and a distant mother,
mm-hmm.
and she has an older sister, Naomi.
Right.
And the time period around which you focus is after Naomi has a child, and Naomi and the child Haley come to live on the farm in New Canaan with the parents,
right.
and Joss.
Right. So it's kind of, this magical summer in many ways with Joss and Haley, her nephew, and Joss's best friend Fletcher, who lives in this farm community, and they do all the kinds of things that kids used to do, you know, or kids still do, hopefully. Playing outside, playing in the woods, going fishing, getting in trouble, you know, having a great time. But there is always a tension that occurs around Haley, around all their relationships with their families, with Fletcher's family, with Joss's family, which is pretty fractured. And
well, the name of the book is Stony Kill, and that's the river that runs through New Canaan, is it?
Yeah, it's Canaan.
Canaan.
Right.
Rather.
It runs through upstate New York. Right.
And so, how does the river tie in to the story?
Well, I make a lot of allusions to rivers and water in the story, and what they mean. So, and you'll have to read the book to understand that, because I don't want to give lots of it away. But it does have a life meaning. There's a character in the book named Miss Euphrates, who is named after the Euphrates River because of a story in her life, that her parents chose that name for her. And Haley's name his actual name is Nahaliel, which is the angel of the river.
Right.
So there's all these allusions to water and rivers and what that means to the story.
And so you have this character Joss, and she has a father, Paul, who apparently wanted a boy when she was born, and calls her Paulie girl and
Boyo. Yeah.
For most of her young life.
Right.
Can you explain the relationship between her and her father?
Well, you know, her father is a very self-involved individual, and wants what he wants, and he wants this child to be a reflection of him. So he calls her his name. And, you know, she struggles with that throughout, you know, her childhood and into adulthood. She struggles with who am I really? Am I really just a reflection of my father and my mother, or am I an individual who makes my own choices? And that's part of her journey. So it's really, I use the device of her father seeing her as him to tell the readers what's really going on.
Well, it's almost a magnification of what we all have to do, which is separate from our parents.
Right. So it's an exaggeration to some degree.
Yes.
But, you know, it says, it's a shorthand. It says something, it says a whole lot without explaining it. If you read, you know, if you think about it as a reader.
And then she has this very distant relationship with her mother, who is almost not there in her life.
Right.
And actually rejects her. Why?
Because I think that, you know, I think the mother decided, well, if, you know, she's her father's child and there's no room for me. So it was a parental falter, if you will. And because the story is about neglect, it's about guns and kids, and if you, I've read various books on the subject actually after I wrote this, and they're often set up the same way, these kinds of families. It's amazing. Gregory Orr, I don't know if you know the writer Gregory Orr, he wrote a book called Blessing. It was about how he accidentally killed his brother when he was a young boy. And he teaches writing, I think, at the University of Virginia. It's an amazing book. And I read it this summer after this was already gone to press, and it was amazing, the correlations. And
the correlations between the family dynamics?
Between the family dynamics.
And what you wrote about in this book?
Right.
Well, that's very, very interesting.
Yeah, it was to me too. And I was glad that I hadn't read his book before.
Yes, yeah. But you know, I'm sitting here listening to you, and you told me you were a florist, and and you have this whole transformation of your focus in life from being a creator of something physically beautiful to being a writer of prose. And I'm wondering, from where did all this spring?
Well, I think as a kid I loved writing. I loved reading, loved books from a very early age, and I always had this little fantasy that I would be a writer, but never really actualized it until I got a little older. But also, you know, I will say this, that being a florist and being a writer are really related, because you either arrange words or you arrange flowers or whatever. There is a real correlation in my head that how to arrange it in a beautiful way.
And it is your writing is lyrical. It's very pretty. I can open the page, I can open the book to any page, and find something that is crafted in a beautiful manner. I'm just going to read this one sentence. She said that lady could sing and had a whole gaggle of women who come here every week to sing and play the piano. That same old piano that's out in the mill house now. There's just a richness of language, phrasing, words, alliterations in almost every sentence that makes me think it must have been a true labor of love. It must have been, I mean, did you go over and craft each sentence very carefully?
Yes. Yeah, and I think there are writers who write from an outline in there, which I never do because it kind of keeps me in the box. And then there are writers that go from sentence to sentence. It's kind of like a path of breadcrumbs in the woods. You know, one thing, it just leads you to where it's going to go. And you're just there as a vessel to jot it down.
Is that how it worked with this book?
Yeah, it did.
So so Joss has a boyfriend, the 33-year-old Joss has this boyfriend named Wyatt, and I want to know where he came from in your mind. Well, a couple places. It was interesting how we had neighbors that both the father and the son were in the Marines. The father resigned after 9/11, and he went to Kuwait, and his son went to Iraq. And we were at a picnic, a neighborhood picnic, and we were talking, and he was talking about women who write servicemen, and some of the... And that's how Joss met Wyatt.
Right. And it was very interesting what he said, and so it sparked an idea in my head of how to have this couple meet and have this romance.
Well, the way they met was that Joss voluntarily began writing to a service man overseas, and it was a random choice. But there were letters back and forth, and they got to know each other in writing, and then by some coincidence. Was it a coincidence, or did
I really think
Wyatt put himself there?
He purposely does this.
Puts himself in
her world.
In New York, where the bakery is,
right.
Because Joss runs the family bakery,
right.
As a mature woman.
Right.
They meet and they have a relationship.
Right.
Why is Wyatt so perfect?
He's just a great guy. He's a bit like my husband. He really is. He's a really caring, great guy, and he has his struggles. It's not that he doesn't struggle with things personally, but I just think that he's one of these salt of the earth kind of individuals, kind of quiet, sure in who he is as a human being. And I think when people are that way, they're great people. Whether they don't hang up the their coats or clean up the breakfast dishes or whatever, that other stuff is what's more important, that other kind of a person that really is grounded, and he is in this.
So if Wyatt is your husband, are you Joss?
Yes, to a degree. Or I was Joss.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, she struggles with a lot of things, with a lot of issues, and you know, I think when I was younger, I did too. But I think that I have come out the other side as a person with some wisdom and insight, and which Miss Euphrates is in the story. So
tell us who Miss Euphrates is to Joss.
Miss Euphrates is a nanny that Joss's mother hires, and
is she a woman of color?
She's a woman of color, and she's just this very grounded, wise, smart, knows what to do, gets everything, gets the deal, has struggled in her own life too, and that's, you know.
But yet we find out somewhere along the line that she is the wife of a late senator.
Right, a state senator.
State senator.
Right, and her son is a lawyer. So there's a lot more to her than what she shows on the surface. And I think you get that feeling from her, but she's not the kind of person that is going to tell you all that. So it's up to you to figure it out.
And she is, among other things, a pie baker.
She's a pie baker.
And you have created, from this book, you've created another book.
I have.
Tell us the name of it.
It's called Miss Euphrates Pies. And it's a little cookbook that I wrote with pie recipes, because I've been known to bake a few pies in my day. And so my publisher put it out, and actually it's on my website. And
your website is mariewhitesmall.com.
Right, and if you sign up for the newsletter, you get a free copy of the pie recipe book, so it's kind of fun.
Well, I'm going to do that, because I could always use another pie recipe.
Absolutely, who couldn't?
But so we've talked about Joss's relationship to most of the key characters in the book. We haven't mentioned her relationship to her sister Naomi and Naomi's son, Haley, who is only a few years younger than Joss.
That's right. That's right. He's 7 and she's 12 in the story. So Joss was a child, probably unexpected child in her parents' marriage. And there's many years difference between the two of them. And
between Naomi and
Joss. Naomi gets pregnant at 17 and runs off with, some guy, and her father pretty much disowns her, but her mother takes care of her. And so there's this, always in this story, there's this, the mother and Naomi are united, and Joss and the father are united, and there's not a lot of room in the middle. So they're a very strange split kind of family dynamic that occurs there, which happens often.
Where did the idea of the farmhouse come from? This place that they.
Oh, I wanted to find a place that was by a river and with a dam.
Yeah.
So I went on the internet and searched, and I found this place in Claverack, New York, and actually went to it. And it's called Red Mills. It's Route 23, maybe. I can't remember. But there's this beautiful old house across the street that was for sale, and then the mill house. And so we went and visited it, and then I said, "Oh, this is where the story's going to take place, but by the magic of being a writer, I'm going to move it to Canaan, New York." And
And why did you choose Canaan?
Because of the biblical meanings of the word. Because Canaan was the land of milk and honey. It was the promised land, so they were on Sweet Milk Road in Canaan. And but yet it was a place of a lot of disruption, and actually the word Canaan means transformation. So so I use that place. It is a place of transformation. I believe that people get to the end of the book and see that there are going to be changes to the place and the people where they are. So that's why I use that place name.
Yeah, and I'm hesitating to go to talk too much about the ending of the book because I don't want to spoil it. There is, as we said at the beginning of the show, there's a gun incident actually at the beginning of the book. The mother's brother Morgan is shot from afar. The bullet comes from nowhere, out of nowhere,
Right.
and he's killed instantly. Why did you have that happen?
Because I'm saying something about families. And what I'm saying about families is that family history often repeats itself. That's what I'm saying, without saying it out loud.
Yeah, without a spoiler.
Right, and so, families are embedded with myth and stories that become part of what family members believe in. And it happens all the time, in little ways and in big ways.
Not sure what you mean by that, though, in terms of this incident.
I've just known in my own family growing up were things that were repeated that happened that were not necessarily great things to happen. It's just, well, I'll just use this as an example. It's not about my family particularly. But for instance, in families where there's a suicide,
Yes.
the children of a suicide victim are much more likely to commit suicide because the taboo has been broken.
The door's been open.
It's been open. There is a sense of permission, and that's what I'm saying. That there are permissions granted by past events.
And so even though consciously there's no motive, there's no intention
Right.
of this happening, subconsciously the pieces are put into place.
I'll tell you another interesting thing. That the book that I spoke about, the Orr book, in that family, the father actually had killed a child accidentally with a gun. And then the son turned around and did the same thing.
Oh.
It was just remarkable, if that's the word for it,
Yeah.
So when you read things like that and things like this book, it's like you realize that, well, I hope people realize that it often happens where things that, incidents reoccur.
I want you to just read very briefly
Okay.
just a page of the book. And
Sure.
this is a scene where Haley, the nephew, and Joss are together on Joss's 11th birthday.
Right. Well, it's actually her 12th.
Her 12th birthday.
Yeah. So, and they go upstairs. Haley is given Joss crayons for her birthday. So, and this is in Joss's voice. "Come on, Haley," I said. "I'll show you my room." We clomped up the stairs in our striped socks and fancy shoes, carrying the crayons and paper. "Let's draw monsters," he said. But not before I looked at my reflection in my mother's mirror. I wasn't Cinderella this time, but I looked more like a girl these days under my mother's wing, and that made me happy. "Are you coming to color with me?" Haley asked. We lay on my bedroom floor, sheets of paper spread like hopscotch squares, each of us hoarding our favorite colors, radical red and razzmatazz, or inchworm and laser lemon. I pulled out markers, glue, and glitter too. Haley's creatures were medieval, with pointy-toed shoes and frog heads, or half boy and half bumblebee. "Look at this one," he said. "It's a codfish with a top hat and a polka dot bow tie." I laughed and showed him mine, red-haired aliens with antennae and huge almond-shaped eyes, or fashion models dressed as old-school Sisters of St. Joseph, with long, glittery hair flowing from beneath their headdresses. We colored and giggled, adding moonscape backgrounds to our collection, all the while telling each other stories. He told me that he played the piano and had since he was 3 years old. I told him the story of Miss Euphrates and how she was named after the river because of a talking mangar fish.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
So this is a transitional scene,
Right.
and I'm wondering when Joss returns to this scene again later in the book.
Mm-hmm.
When you wrote this scene, did you have that in mind?
No. No, I didn't. I think in the sense that I write in an unfolding way, where the ideas come to me as like, oh, put her back in the closet. So.
And so for those of us who would love to be a writer of a book, tell us just quickly and briefly what advice you would give to a writer wanting to get published.
Well, I think the first thing is that you have to, jump right into the story, right in the first few pages, especially for a first-time writer. Not a lot of setup, just begin. I think that's really, really important. And just keep at it. Join a group. Just keep at it and get as much critique as you can from all kinds of people. But at the same time, know who you are. Know your own voice.
Thank you, Marie.
Thank you.
So it's been a pleasure meeting you and talking with you today, and I
Thanks.
really enjoyed the book. I read it cover to cover.
Mm-hmm.
So I would
Well,
encourage
thank you.
anybody out there to get a copy of it when it's available.
It is now.
It is on Amazon,
It's
I
on
assume?
Amazon and Barnes & Noble, and you can buy it from independent bookshops too. They can order it for you if they don't have it in stock.
Thank you. For the Westford Eagle, Joyce Pellino Crane, thank you for visiting with us today.